What is more important for a program, culture or donors? Henceforth to be referred to as boosters on this show. Schools with big boosters more frequently win championships, but can also be bad. And schools with less boosters but better culture are more consistent but not contenders. So this is an age-old question. What's more important, having those deep pockets or having a rock-solid culture? Well, I would say to win it all, to float at the highest level, the tier 1 level in college football, it's essential to have both. I don't care how good your culture is. If you don't have money, you cannot win at the highest level in this sport. But money does not guarantee you anything. So the best way I can put this for you is good culture does not guarantee anything. Bad culture absolutely does guarantee something, and that something is not good. It's kind of like if you think about topsoil. I could have the most fertile, rich topsoil in the world out in your garden there in the backyard. The topsoil is not going to grow anything. I've still got to put the seed in the ground. I've still got to water it and cultivate it and harvest it. But if I got bad soil in the backyard, no amount of hard work will make it produce anything. So, there's a lot of kids out there in a lot of programs with bad culture who work their tails off. Think about the mixed message this sends to an 18 or a 19-year-old kid who is told their whole lives, you got to work hard for what you want. And let's say they embrace it. And they go to a program and the culture is subpar, and so they've got just crappy soil, and yet they're planting and planting and planting, and they're investing, and they're spending their time the right way, and yet they're getting nothing in return. They're losing on Saturdays, their draft stock's not where they want it to be. What kind of mixed message must that send? Especially to a young kid. If you're 44 years old, maybe you get it. But if you're 19, I can't guarantee that you understand what's going on there, and that's going on a lot. That's why you watch sometimes and you can go to practice and you can see hard hits and ultra physical nature of practice, and you can see guys lifting in the summer months. Some people would refer to that as a word that starts with an O, but we don't. And you think, how could this team lose? Like, look how serious they take this. The soil isn't what it needs to be. I don't know what else to tell you. Now, there is a misconception out there, two of them actually, that I wanted to hit on right quick. The first misconception is that money solves things in college football. Money alone doesn't solve anything. Texas is the prime example of this. Texas has limitless financial resources, and they've been horrifically bad relative to what they should be over the last number of years. It certainly hasn't been a money issue. It hasn't been a donor issue, well, at least in terms of financial resource, but it has been a donor issue in another sense. And this is well documented with Texas. This is not a bash on Texas kind of show or segment or anything like that, but money sometimes fools people into thinking, even if things start to go sideways, don't worry, because we got a lot of money and we can just throw it at the problem. I asked Jesse, I'll ask you, can you find me anything in football or society that merely throwing money at, with no design or purpose behind it or plan behind it, solves? No, we're not exactly doing a segment on government right now, but it's very, very correlated to what we see a lot of times. You throw money at something, you just probably waste a lot of money. You got to channel the money. You got to channel the resources. And in football, it has to be tied in culturally to a very solid foundation, or else you're just lighting your money on fire. But then the follow-up to that is misnomer number 2. The other misnomer in college football is that booster equals bad. There's always a pejorative connotation around booster. No, boosters aren't bad at all. Some of the greatest people that make some of the greatest things you experience on your campus or in your game day environment and setting in your stadium and what's available to players is because of the deep and bountiful but also philanthropic pockets of those boosters. You need them. You have to have them. A booster that has a warped view of what their role is in a program, now that is a bad thing. And sometimes you have to disassociate. There's very famous stories out there about what Nick Saban did when he got to Alabama. There were some folks that had long since become used to running things up there and sort of walking around with a certain gravitas and a certain authority because of the check they wrote to the university there every year. And Nick Saban looked and said, I could take your job or leave it. I do want to come there, but it's going to be me or these folks. It's not going to be both of us. I'm not about to try and compete with dudes who own a rubber cement plant in Tuscumbia. No, I'm running the program, and if they want to get on board with my way of doing things, great, we'll win multiple championships. But if they don't, then it's either me or them. Guess who got disassociated from the program? It wasn't Nick Saban. He's still there today. So I think it turned out okay. You've got to have someone running your program that understands the difference. And it's a fine balance. Even Nick Saban is not immune to this. Nick Saban has to sit there and grit his teeth sometimes and spend a day on a golf course in the middle of July with folks that he may not in an ideal world be hanging out with. Kirby Smart's got to do it. Dabo's got to do it. I'm just saying those guys also understand where the line is drawn. And some coaches, especially young ones out there, I speak like I have experience. I've heard the stories. That's my experience. I have experience hearing stories of young coaches that they had no grasp on where that line was. Like who do I allow to have access? How much access? We couldn't have had this building on campus without this person. They've been around long before I was born if I'm a young coach. How can I tell them no? Well, here's how. You run the program. They hired you to be the head coach, not my boy over here running the rubber cement plant. So it's tough. I didn't say it was easy, but they're not paying you $7.5 million a year to make easy decisions. We can do that. They're paying you to make the hard decisions. So booster versus culture. You got to have both. And if you just have one, like you could have, for example, great culture, limited financial resource, you could still do some good things. You're not flying at the highest level. Your plane is not reaching cruising altitude where it needs to unless you got the financial resources to make it happen too.